What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another edition of Touchline Talk here on 110 Sports on this very special election day. We're going to talk soccer as we always do. Not as many high profile games over the weekend. A couple we're going to touch on. A memorable moment for a team pushing to get to the top of the Premier League, and a player in particular we're going to touch on. Your bigger games in terms of significance, though, were in Major League Soccer. We're also going to get to that with the regular season winding down, race for the Supporters' Shield tightening up. All of that good stuff. We're going to look ahead to a really busy couple days here with Champions League and more MLS action that's got playoff implications. Plenty to talk about today. We're going to start with our first five as always. And we're going to start with what was probably the biggest win of the weekend for anybody, and that's Arsenal beating Manchester United. And finally, you see all those stats about Arsenal's struggles against the top six, especially away from home. These are games that typically they have not been able to win. And they came out and put in a really good performance. I talked after the Leicester game about how that just didn't look like this team that we've seen under Mikel Arteta. They didn't have the same purpose and desire and intensity that was the reason that there was so much growing optimism about what he was doing. And then all of a sudden it returned. This looked like the Arsenal team we've been seeing that has been so successful in cup competitions and has really progressed, and you're seeing the improvement. They've still got a ways to go, but they are clearly a different team than the one that Arteta inherited from Unai Emery. And you saw that again in this game. Aubameyang's penalty kick is the difference. I don't know what Paul Pogba was doing. This is the same narrative that I have been harping on when it comes to Manchester United. They can beat anybody on any given day if they look great. They can rip teams apart on the counter. But I need to see them consistently make good decisions and not put themselves in these kind of positions for me to believe they can actually finish in the top four this season. It's the same story. They're going to look great over periods of time, and then they're going to come back and have results like this one, where they were just bad. And Pogba makes a terrible decision in the box. That kind of stuff can't happen if Manchester United wants to get back to where Manchester United expects to be. These are the kind of things that Solskjaer has no control over. And things like this are kind of the reason why Pogba was taken out of the starting lineup there for a little bit. It just has to be better. And I am just going to sit here and not believe it's going to get better until I actually see it. I've said this before, I'm not getting fooled by the good runs of form and what they've done in the Champions League. It's not about showing up for one game in the Premier League, it's about being consistent over 38, and they're just not consistent. They've got incredible talent, that front three is really good, but they have these mental lapses and this inability to just generate the results that they need. Arsenal were clearly the better team. They dominated the midfield. Thomas Partey was phenomenal. That's going to be a really good signing. And the other tactical thing here is I will just never understand why anybody thinks it's a good idea to play a box or diamond or something where you reduce the width of your midfield, like Manchester United did, against these teams with all of this width that make their living off of their fullbacks or their wingbacks, whatever system they might be playing. Brendan Rodgers did this against Liverpool on, I think it was Boxing Day, when Leicester got destroyed. He played a box with four central midfielders against Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson. I will never understand that, because all you're going to do is you're going to get pinned in, and that's pretty much what happened to Manchester United. Arsenal's midfield was good, and then you had not only a clear wing back who wants to get forward in Hector Bellerin, you had Bukayo Saka, who's not even a defender at all, playing left wing back on the other side, so he was essentially just playing as a winger, and then Kieran Tierney would come and join the attack because he's also attack-minded, playing as a left center back. And so United just got stuck because Arsenal had all of this width and they didn't have the people to deal with it, and they were playing a bunch of central midfielders without any wide players outside of what was happening up front. It just continues to perplex me. I don't understand why any manager thinks that's a good idea. It's not specific to Solskjaer, because that one always stood out to me when Brendan Rodgers did that too. Of course, they're in their positions for a reason. Maybe they know something I don't, but that idea has always baffled me. The other thing with Arsenal here, they've conceded 7 goals in 7 Premier League games. That's the lowest total in the league. And it's even more impressive considering who they've had to play already. It's not like they've had an easy start to the season. And that's what you're seeing as a result of where they still are in the table. I think they're better, and you should be more optimistic than where they actually sit right now, because they've already had to play some of the best teams in the league. And they came up just short against Liverpool and just short against Manchester City. So it was important to get one of these over the line and be on the right result, because they played pretty well. They just were struggling to score goals a little bit, and it wasn't the best offensive performance in this game. But they get the win, and the narrative with Arsenal has been they got to fix the defense. The defense isn't good enough. They're making cataclysmic errors, and it's laughably bad at times. They're really good going forward, but it doesn't matter if you can't clean things up at the back. They've cleaned things up at the back so far. You got to give those center backs credit. You've got to give this new system credit. It's working. They are headed in the right direction. And it's sort of fitting that they got this win against Manchester United, because you just look at this and from a big picture perspective, I can see the progression in Arsenal. I understand where they're going, what Mikel Arteta is trying to do, and you can see they're getting more comfortable, they're getting more confident. It's going somewhere. I got no clue where United's going. It's just the same cycle. Looked really good, head-scratching loss, really bad performance. Pogba's inconsistent, in and out of the team, playing well, not playing well, injured. You sign Donny van de Beek and there's no spot for him in the team. You're crying out for more reinforcements when there's been a decent amount of money spent and it's still not good enough. The defense is good sometimes, awful other times. And it ultimately comes down to these mistakes that they continue to make. This is a mentality thing. It's not just Solskjaer, but I stick by what I said. They want to finish top 4. They need a managerial change, because that's the easiest change you can make. You can point to other things. It's not just on him, but this is who United are. They're going to be brilliant sometimes, and then there's going to be games like this. So Arsenal get a really big win that they needed, and you're looking at some of the issues that some of these managers are having right now, whether it's Pep or Solskjaer or whoever it might be. Lampard's come under great criticism. Mikel Arteta's got this thing figured out. He's the only one that you really haven't heard a lot of criticism levied his way recently. And it's because there's progress. He had a lot of work to do to fix the problems at Arsenal. But you're seeing those problems be fixed, and the problems at United are just as prominent as they have been for the past 3, 4, 5, however many years. Stay in the Premier League for number 2. Gareth Bale plays hero for Spurs in his return to White Hart Lane. Hadn't really done much up to this point, but he gets a massive goal. Spurs go ahead on a Harry Kane penalty in the 13th minute. And then you have this controversial equalizer by Tariq Lamptey, who, by the way, is still playing really well and is not going to be at Brighton for very long. He is special. He's incredible. So good. It looked like there was a foul in the build-up. Definitely appeared that way to me. Obviously, Spurs felt that way, but they don't get the call. VAR upholds the goal. So all of a sudden, it's 1-1. And then here comes Gareth Bale to make the difference and put the ball in the back of the net after Spurs had some really good chances. Brighton played well in this game, but Spurs really put the pressure on at the end, and it finally broke in the 73rd minute with Bale's goal. And what a cool moment for him with everything he went through at Real Madrid and being back at Spurs to make the difference in this game. And it was a big goal because as high as I am on Spurs and as well as they're playing, they were on the verge of another disappointing draw where they have all these chances, they look like they deserve a win, and it just doesn't happen. At some point, you've got some margin of error this season because everything's been so weird and so many teams are dropping points. But at some point, if you're trying to really contend, you got to turn those draws into wins. You got to win the games that your performance suggests you deserve all 3 points from. And Spurs have already had a couple of those, specifically that Newcastle game. Not necessarily their fault, but you can't fall into a pattern of having a we were the better team and just didn't get all 3 points situation going on. So they find a way to get all 3. Really big. It moved them up to second for a little bit in the table. Then Leicester beat Leeds. But they're right there in the thick of this thing. And especially with the schedule that Liverpool has coming up, it's not out of the question you could see Spurs at the top of the table pretty soon here, depending on how things go. So, really cool moment for Gareth Bale. Really important moment for Spurs as they defeat Brighton. Number 3, Cristiano Ronaldo has finally returned for Juventus and did so with aplomb. This is another team that continues to have these draws and head-scratching results that they just can't afford. So he enters the game with it 1-1 in the 56th minute against Spezia Calcio. He scores in the 59th and then scores on a PK in the 76th, and all of a sudden it's 4-1, Juventus get the win. And even more than for Spurs, Juventus needed this win because they have got to stop dropping points against these bad teams. Their schedule has not been all that difficult. It's not like they're playing AC Milan and then Napoli and then Atalanta. If they want to win Serie A, they have got to start taking care of the games they're supposed to, or else they're going to put themselves in a position where they're going to have to win time after time against the other teams at the top of the table. Because they've just not been consistent and haven't picked up the points that they should in the softer portion. But they get all 3 here, thanks in large part to Ronaldo. Of course, this sport is just better when Ronaldo is healthy. And it's going to be interesting to see if COVID has any impact on him, because you're seeing it across the sports world that some of these guys are coming back and they're just not the same. Be it Kendrick Nunn in the NBA bubble, Cam Newton, you can go down the list. I continue to harp on this point across various platforms. It's not COVID is not a sprained ankle where you get healed and then you're good to go. We don't know what the long-term implications of this are, and we don't know how it's going to affect everybody individually. So I'm not going to sit here and assume that Ronaldo is going to be back to 100% Ronaldo right away. Now, he had a really good start in his return, and maybe he's totally okay, but it's something at least I wanted to acknowledge and worth keeping an eye on. But he's now finally in line to start playing in the Champions League, and this Juventus team really could have used that boost. So he came back at a great time for them, and immediately went and made the difference in this game to put them back in a position where they're in the thick of it, just because outside of AC Milan, nobody's been consistent enough in Serie A. Atalanta have been decent, but they already had a bad stretch too. It's across the board. We're seeing weird results, and these teams are just dropping points like crazy, with the exception of PSG, who we're going to get to briefly in winners and losers. The other La Liga, Serie A, Premier League, and Bundesliga not so much. We'll also touch on that later. But some of these leagues, it's chaos right now. So whoever's going to be able to be most consistent and whoever can avoid dropping all of these points is going to put themselves in good position. So Juventus are by no means out of it and probably are going to get some momentum here, have to get some momentum going because so far it just hasn't been good enough. I hinted about this at the very beginning, but some significant developments in the Supporters' Shield race in Major League Soccer over the weekend. The Philadelphia Union came into their game against Columbus with not a chance to actually clinch the Supporters' Shield, but for all intents and purposes to clinch it with a win. But they're without Andre Blake because he got hurt in that ugly win against Chicago. And I feel very confident saying the Union get at least a point out of this game, if not all three, if Andre Blake's playing in net. Joe Bendik was just rusty and had two bad moments, and those two bad moments resulted in 2 goals for Columbus. Artur opens the scoring on a shot that I just think Andre Blake saves, and that as a goalkeeper you got to do better on. The Union come out flying after halftime, have some really good chances, get a penalty that Jamiro Montero converts to make it 1-1, plenty of other good chances, and then kind of out of nowhere, Columbus starts to get back into the game, and it's a ball that's played across the 6-yard box, and as a goalie, you've got to just take that and own your area. Bendik has to go grab it, and he doesn't, and there's Christian Nemeth, who also had a massive goal against the Union in the U.S. Open Cup final, to put it in the back of the net and give Columbus the win. It was not a bad performance from Philly by any means. They showed some real resiliency after going down a goal, but goalkeeping has to be better, and there's also the reality that I pointed this out when they played Toronto. Jim Curtin got to put his preferred 11 out there, and now they don't have that preferred 11, just like Toronto is dealing with all kinds of injuries, and Columbus had a stretch where they didn't have their key players, and now all of a sudden they're getting back to full strength, and so you see them able to pull off a result like this. So the Union missed their opportunity. Toronto almost missed their opportunity to make this really interesting on Sunday. They get a late Alejandro Pozuelo penalty to get a 2-1 win over Inter Miami, which puts them back level on points with the Union. The Union hold the tiebreaker. We'll get into all of that on Thursday about what can happen, but Toronto get the big win. It nearly was a loss, though. Gonzalo Higuain had one of the more remarkable touches I've ever seen. He gets a ball played across the field, and he traps it flawlessly. It was incredible to watch, and then cuts inside and bends this shot that hits off the inside of the crossbar and somehow doesn't go into the back of the net. And that would have put Miami up 2-1. And for a guy who really hasn't made the impact they're hoping for, that could have been a massive moment as they're trying to get into the playoffs. But he catches a really bad break. Toronto get the PK, Richie Larea making the difference again going forward. He is quickly becoming one of the most underappreciated players in this league for me. And so all of the breaks that Philly got on Wednesday, both in their game and with NYCFC beating Toronto, all those breaks go Toronto's way to make this a really exciting race on decision day, which is ultimately all you can ask for. Seattle lose 3-1 to Colorado, so it's down to these two teams. It's Toronto and Philly. One game to go to see who ends up winning the Supporters' Shield. It could have very easily been decided this weekend, but Toronto get the goal, Philly give up the late goal instead of finding a way to win that game, and we've got a really exciting end to the season from a Supporters' Shield perspective as a result. I just mentioned NYCFC. Also wanted to talk about what they did to the New York Red Bulls in the Hudson River Derby. They win 5-2. They were down 2-1 after 38 minutes and then led by the 51st minute. Valentin Castellano scores a hat trick and is really rounding into form at the right time for them. And Alex Ring scores a really, really good goal to make it 3-2 right out of halftime. It was a really, really pretty strike. That midfield is really good, and it's easy to sometimes forget about, and they've had a lot of movement up front with injuries and players leaving, and it hasn't been perfect for NYCFC by any means, but this team is dangerous. With Castellanos scoring goals like that, your Maxi Morales, Keaton Parks, Alex Ring midfield, Anton Tinnerholm is the best attacking outside back in this league, best attacking defender in this league. And they're really starting to pick up some momentum. So they're a team to watch coming to the postseason. Postseason has not treated them well in their short history, but they're rounding into form really nicely. And I mentioned before this game that this series had been dead even the last 5 times they've met. And then NYCFC does this in a game that was really close in the first half, and then they take control in the second half and just keep pouring it on. This is only the second time that 5 goals have been scored in this rivalry, I believe. The last time it happened was that 7-0 beatdown the Red Bulls put on NYCFC. So, NYCFC these past couple seasons have done a good job at getting this rivalry back to being sort of even and competitive, and it was not all that competitive by the end of this game. Really, really good win for Ronnie Dela's team, and they're a force to be reckoned with, in my opinion. It's easy to sleep on them when you're talking about Orlando and Columbus and Toronto and Philly, but if you would put them out west, I would put them up against anybody, honestly. They're just in a really deep conference, and it hasn't been perfect. Adjusting to a new manager, didn't get off to a good start, just couldn't put the ball in the net those first couple weeks before the shutdown, but here they are in really good form when it matters most, so keep an eye on NYCFC. Those are our first 5. We're going to take our first break. When we come back, like we do every Tuesday, winners and losers from the weekend in Europe. You're watching Touchline Talk on 110 Sports.